Could Lady Gaga win her first Grammy for Album of the Year, or is it Kendrick Lamar or Bad Bunny's turn? I'm going to go through all that on today's Grammys preview for Albums of the Year. I am Sam, also known as Pop Sam Cam, and this is the Pop Pod. Welcome to another week of the Pop Pod. Thank you for joining me. As always, just a few bits of housekeeping to get out of the way. If you love this podcast, if you love pop music, please hit follow or subscribe. And if you really, really like it, hit 5 stars wherever you can rate this podcast, because it really helps with the visibility and growing this community that we've been building over the past couple months. There's also a Discord if you really want to chat about all the new releases, throwback albums, anything that has to do with pop music. That's on our Discord. You can see that in the show notes down below if you would like to join that. Let's get into the podcast today. Miley Cyrus has revealed the track list for her forthcoming album, Something Beautiful, which is out on the 30th of May. We'd already kind of got it in dribs and drabs, but now we have it as a proper list. It's 13 songs long. There are 3 kind of interludes, preludes on the album. So that basically means 10 new songs. Obviously, we've heard Something Beautiful, More to Lose, and we've also heard End of the World, but there is plenty more to come. If you want a preview of the album, there's an episode where I talk about hearing it in full and my experience with it. But we also have a preview of another new song called Easy Lover. Here it is.
You make it hard to touch. Anything goes when we're undercuffs. But you're not an easy lover.
Charli XCX's I Think About It All the Time is the latest song to go viral by her. This song actually has the least streams of any song on Brat. But there is currently a trend on TikTok which uses I Think About It All the Time, the remix version with Bon Iver, and it's growing just exponentially over the last couple days. Last time I checked, it was up to 13,000 uses. So I would expect that this song is going to have a little bit of a run over the next couple of weeks. I will keep you updated on that. Another song that is having a viral run that I've been updating you on is Ariana Grande's Supernatural, and it continues to rise.
It's like supernatural skills, but it says to me that I don't mind it. It's like supernatural.
It's now up to number 93 on the global Spotify charts, and she's released the video for it today. Now, we already saw the video for this song in the Brighter Days Ahead kind of like mini film that she did, but now we have a singular version of it on YouTube, which to me tells me that the team is wanting to push this as a single, having seen the reaction it has had since it started going viral on TikTok. Last bit of news, JJ, who was the Austrian entry for Eurovision, who took it home over the weekend, his song Wasted Love has debuted at number 22 on the global Spotify chart.
When you let me go, I barely stayed afloat. I'm floating all alone. Still I'm holding on to hope.
This is kind of what's expected. Obviously, the winner does well off the back of the results, but 22 is a very good result, and I expect we're going to see this stick around in the next couple days. The Swedish entry, Kai, has also done pretty well. It's the biggest gainer on global Spotify charts today as well, but all eyes are on JJ right now. On to the main part of the podcast, and a lot of you have been asking me about the Grammys next year and who are the frontrunners for Album of the Year. So today I'm going to do sort of an early preview at the ones that I think are the frontrunners right now, and also the ones that I don't think really have a chance. The Grammys submission period runs until September, so there is still a while for albums to be released that could eventually take out the award, but we have a pretty large chunk of albums now that I think are pretty high up in the running to take out the award. So I'm going to go through album by album of some of the big ones that have been released this year, some of the notable ones, and tell you why I think they could take it home or why I think they might not even get nominated. I'm going to go through albums by Lady Gaga, Bad Bunny, The Weeknd, Kendrick Lamar, So many more. Elton John, Charli XCX, SZA. There's a couple of deluxe editions, remix albums in there that we need to talk about their eligibility for the award as well. Let's start with Kendrick Lamar's GNX.
Looking for the broccoli, hot key, keep a horn on me, that come my seat.
This one was released at the tail end of last year and was obviously a huge record for him, a #1 record. It came off the back of Not Like Us. Not Like Us last year won record and song of the year. Kendrick Lamar has had luck in the Grammys in the past in a lot of the genre categories, but hasn't always broke through in the main categories. He's never won Album of the Year. That is a pretty contentious topic. I think given that we discussed that a lot last year, or this year rather, with Beyonce and Cowboy Carter, Kendrick is the next in line after Beyonce, I think, in terms of snubs for Album of the Year, because he has come close on so many occasions, I think, and never quite taken it out. I think GNX is his best chance. And I think that because, one, it's been such a massive period for him. He's on a stadium tour right now. And two, I think that the Grammys has changed, as we saw this year, and I think that they are now looking to rectify some of their past mistakes, and one of their past mistakes is definitely not awarding it to Kendrick Lamar. So I think the GNX is one of the frontrunners, potentially the frontrunner to take out the award this year. The next one is Elton John and Brandi Carlile, who have released an album called Who Believes in Angels.
What does it cost to buy a soul back when you die? What are the angels gonna do with you and I?
Commercially, this one hasn't lit the world on fire, but there are two main things to consider. The first one being that Brandi Carlile is a Grammys darling. She has never won Album of the Year before, but she has been nominated, and she has been nominated in many of the main categories before. Elton John also has received plenty of Grammy nominations. He's actually never won Album of the Year before for a solo record. In fact, the last time he was nominated for Album of the Year was back in 1975. He was nominated as part of Lil Nas X's Montero, but in terms of an actual full nomination for a project that he handled himself, it was 1975. Obviously, the Grammys does like to do a little bit of a legacy nomination. We've seen it in the past with acts like Bonnie Raitt, and we also saw it with ABBA, and we also saw it with the Beatles this year. So I feel like this could really be in with a chance for a nomination. In terms of a win, I don't really see it as a possibility, given that there's at least 3 or 4 huge records that it would have to beat out. But the Grammys be Grammying sometimes, and you never know where they're going to go with this. This was pretty well critically acclaimed, so it is obviously in with a chance. This next one is the one that a lot of you have been asking me about, and that is Lady Gaga's Mayhem.
Saw your face and mine in a picture of mine. All that time, it was golden summertime.
There are a lot of things to consider with this. I think that she is in a similar position to Kendrick Lamar, in that this era has been somewhat of a renaissance for her. Obviously, her last project, Chromatica, did pretty well, but it actually missed out on an Album of the Year nomination, and I don't think was one of her biggest eras by any standard, but this era has been totally. Hasn't really had a massive hit singles-wise. Abracadabra in the US has missed out on the top 10, and so did Disease. We're still to see what the third single is going to do. I say that just discounting that Die With A Smile is on the album and is a #1 single, and also took home an award, the Grammy, for Best Duo/Group Performance last year. So this album technically already has a Grammy, and I think in the same way as Kendrick, maybe they're going to be looking to award someone who's been snubbed in this category in the past. She's been nominated several times, the last one being in 2022 with Love for Sale with Tony Bennett. She didn't win that. She was also nominated for the Fame Monster and Born This Way. She didn't win those either. But Mayhem certainly has the critical acclaim to take it across the line, and I could really see this one doing it. So I think I consider Mayhem to be a front runner, but when I look at my 2 other front runners, and one of them being the next album that I'm going to talk about, which is Bad Bunny, and then Kendrick Lamar as well. I wonder if Mayhem kind of fails in comparison because it doesn't have the major hit. Like GNX has Luther, and then Bad Bunny has the title track as well. And obviously Die With A Smile, one of the biggest hits ever, but I'm wondering if they're going to consider that kind of a last year thing and detach it from the project in some way. I'm not sure how the voters' minds are going to act, but I think to pull it to the top, the emphasis really needs to be on Die With A Smile as being the major hit of the record. And then I think it really could be in with a chance. Like the fact that she's had such a monumental year from doing the Rio show to Coachella, I think that if she could pull out some like incredible award show performances before the year is out, all these things are going to help put the attention back on Mayhem. And also the other thing is it's come like later on after GNX and the Bad Bunny album. So that could actually work in its favor as well in terms of just a recency bias from the voters. But I definitely think that Lady Gaga, if she takes it out for Mayhem, I would be very happy to see that. And I absolutely think it would be deserved from her. Next one, as I said, is Bad Bunny. DeBÍ TiRAR Más FOToS was released back in January and was a massive project for him. The last album he released actually didn't do it did incredibly well. Bad Bunny always does incredibly well streaming-wise, but it didn't really get the same sort of commercial and critical appraisal that his previous projects had done. It missed out on a nomination for Album of the Year, but Un Verano Sin Ti, his 2022 album, that one did get a nomination for Album of the Year and also gave us like this really memorable Grammys performance that he delivered at the top of the show that year. I think that this one could be a really difficult one to beat. And the reason I think that is because, as I said at the beginning with Kendrick Lamar, the Grammys are trying to correct a lot of the issues that they've had over the past few years in terms of blocking out hip hop as one, and then blocking out a lot of world genres from these main categories and putting them in the genre categories. And that means that a lot of the huge acts just haven't been recognized in the way that they should have been. And one of those is Bad Bunny. When you consider the stranglehold he's had on the charts over the past, like, even 6 years, I would say, at this point, it's incredible. And yet, to think that he really hasn't been recognized in these main categories at all, apart from a couple nominations for Un Verano Sin Ti, is really crazy. This album has a huge single in the title track, DTMS. It still has massive singles like on streaming as well. Baila Inolvidable has done very well as well. Nueva Yol as well. And I'm so sorry for my Spanish pronunciation. I'm trying really hard. By the time this album wins Album of the Year, I promise you I will have it down. I think that it could be a really, really strong player in this category. That said, it does come to a little bit of a difficulty in terms of, I know that the Grammys has expanded their voting pool quite a lot, and it's clear that the new voters are up with like R&B and hip hop a lot more than previous ones, but I'm yet to see any proof that they are up with Latin music any more than they were before. Obviously, there is the Latin music category, which obviously I think Bad Bunny's kind of a lock to win at this point, but I want to see it travel further out of that. Bad Bunny, out of all these albums on here, is my Album of the Year. I think that it's the most adventurous. I think that it's the most ambitious, and I think it's the most entertaining as well, to be honest. And I would really love to see the Grammys voters embrace it. I think if they do, I will be fully convinced that this is a brand new horizon for the Grammys. And at least a nomination as well would convince me too. I think I'm not going to say that the Grammys has done something wrong if they don't award it to him, because I think obviously Lady Gaga and Kendrick Lamar are also very worthwhile winners as well. But I would really love to see this take it out. We will see, but surely a nomination for Bad Bunny with this one, given the size of it. The next one, which is I'm on the fence about, is SZA's Lana. It is technically an SOS Deluxe, We saw SOS nominated a couple years ago. It didn't take out the award for Album of the Year, but it was one of the most nominated projects of that year. We saw SZA win in the R&B category last year for Satin. Satin is on Lana. I just don't know if they're going to be able to submit it. And if anyone has clarity to this situation, please drop in the comments and let me know. If it is able to be submitted, I think it has a really good chance. It has a big single in Satin and also BMF as well. And then I think that there are some viral moments still to happen from this record. SZA is also on a stadium tour with Kendrick, and why she hasn't always had a huge winning success with the Grammys in the main categories, she has had success as a nominee, and I really don't think they will snub this. So it's all down to one, whether they will I know they consider deluxe editions because we've seen it with Black Pumas before being nominated for a deluxe, but I'm not sure if they will do it after the original project's already been nominated. That remains to be seen, but if it does, I would kind of lock this in for a nomination, to be honest. The other one that I'm kind of on the fence about for this very reason is Charli XCX with the remix album of Brat.
One of the guess the color of your underwear. Already know what you got going on down there.
We saw Brat get nominated for Album of the Year last year. We know that Charli has some pull with the Grammys now. She won several, particularly in the electronic music categories, and I wonder if that's where the success is going to be more with this remix album. I think that Girl So Confusing with Lorde, because it wasn't submitted last year, it can be submitted this year, particularly because it's off a project that is eligible for nominations this year. That could be the major one to look at. Guess with Billie Eilish, not eligible anymore. That was already nominated in Best Pop Duo/Group Performance. But this album could be, in terms of getting an Album of the Year nomination, it's going to be tough. They're going to have to really rely on the fact that this album's had hits with Girl So Confusing and Guess to pull it over the line. But I think that it's going to be a really hard ask. In fact, I don't actually think I've ever seen a remix album be nominated for Album of the Year. Even though based on the strength of this one, I do think that it is strong enough to be nominated. But I think it's a really outside chance for a nomination. The next one that would have been a huge outside chance until what happened this year is The Weeknd's Hurry Up Tomorrow. The Weeknd was snubbed for his project After Hours. Blinding Lights in particular was a shocking snub given how huge that song was. And after that, he basically decided to boycott the Grammys, and he has done so for several years. After Hours not nominated, nothing from The Idol nominated, nothing from Dawn FM nominated. We get to this point earlier this year, he's about to release, or maybe he had released Hurry Up Tomorrow by the Grammys. And the head of the Grammys, Harvey Mason Jr., comes up and basically says that the beef has been squashed, and then Kendrick Lamar comes on stage and performs Cry For Me. That, to me, puts him not only back in the mix, but very firmly in the mix, because clearly he's having the right conversations, and clearly the Grammys wants to show that their relationship with The Weeknd is better than ever. And a way to do that would be to nominate Hurry Up Tomorrow for Album of the Year. This would actually, I believe, be his second Album of the Year nomination. Yeah, he was nominated for Beauty Behind the Madness, but hasn't been nominated since then. In fact, the last Grammy that he took home was for Best Urban Contemporary Album for Starboy. That was his last solo win at the Grammys. Hurry Up Tomorrow hasn't had a massive hit. Timeless, I think, is the biggest, and it's been pretty big, but certainly not big by Blinding Lights standards or even Save Your Tears standards. But I really can see this happening, just given the charade that they did at the show earlier this year in terms of squashing that beef. And I think that Hurry Up Tomorrow is a good album. It performed pretty well critically. It performed well commercially. It had huge first week sales numbers. So I think that I would count Hurry Up Tomorrow as a very possible chance of a nomination. I think a win would be a stretch, but certainly a nomination. Haim, I Quit.
I hear a voice in my head and it keeps asking, why am I in this relationship? Baby, how can I explain when I need a slip mistake turns into 17 days?
This album is yet to come out. I obviously haven't heard it yet. But Haim had never won a Grammy, but were nominated for Album of the Year for their third album, Women in Music Part 3. I think that shows that they're kind of in favor with the Grammys. They performed the steps at that award ceremony. Very weird one. I think 2021 it was. If Haim's I Quit can keep up the standard of the singles so far, I can't see why another Album of the Year nomination isn't possible, given that they kind of just have to do Women in Music Part 3 again to make it happen. The only reason that I think that it potentially might not happen is I'm thinking about Vampire Weekend with their fifth record. They didn't get an Album of the Year nomination for it after they secured one for Father of the Bride. So in terms of being a kind of alternative act, I think it's sometimes hit and miss with those kind of acts, but Haim definitely have the public profile to be in Grammys voters' faces and maybe make this happen again. Tyler, the Creator, Chromacopia, is a very interesting one.
I'm fucking lying. Can you feel that light inside? Can you feel that fire? Can you feel it?
I think that this was one of the albums of last year. It got huge critical appraisal. It was one of the biggest commercial records of his career. But his history with the Grammys has been kind of interesting. He's won for Rap Album of the Year for his last two records, Call Me If You Get Lost and Igor. Igor, he had a little bit of a problem with being in that category because it wasn't really a rap album, but he accepted the award anyway. Chromacopia, I think, is pretty much a lock to be in the rap categories again. Obviously, now he has huge competition from Kendrick Lamar with GNX, who will probably end up taking home Best Rap Album. But given that the Grammys has potentially been showing that they are a little bit more down with what's actually happening in music, it would be stupid not to recognize that Tyler, the Creator, is one of the biggest names in commercial music. Forget rap music, like he is one of the biggest names. He had a hit with Sticky. Nothing else has been major from that record, which may kind of go against him because I feel like particularly with rappers like him who are a little bit more on the alternative side, despite having huge commercial numbers, he might really need a huge hit to get in the face of the voters. But given that he has won this Rap Album of the Year award twice before, but not been nominated in the major categories, if they are on this course correction, this is a major course correction that they have to do. And Chromacopia is certainly Album of the Year standard. I would not bet money on this being nominated just yet, but I do think it is in with a strong chance of getting a nomination. A win would be almost impossible, I think, but we will see. The Wicked soundtrack.
What is this feeling so sudden and new?
I felt the moment I laid eyes on you.
Another one which is hard to imagine getting nominated. The last soundtrack that was nominated was Black Panther in 2019. Black Panther was entirely original music and had a massive hit on it with All the Stars with Kendrick and SZA. Given that Wicked is essentially not any new music, I mean, forgive me, I haven't seen Wicked. Maybe there's an original song in there or two. I'm not so sure. The Grammys has also been very up and down with Ariana Grande. We saw what they did last year to Eternal Sunshine, which was basically relegated it to the pop categories and didn't give it any love in the main categories, despite I think that it really deserved, particularly for We Can't Be Friends, maybe for Record of the Year. So I'm not sure whether they will pull this, but Wicked had success with Oscar nominations. It had success with Golden Globe nominations. It was hugely critically acclaimed. A lot of the reason for that was the vocals that Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande served on it. And I think that it was a huge cultural moment that may need to be recognized at the Grammys in some way. So I wouldn't count this out for an Album of the Year nomination, but I certainly would be surprised to see it in there. Another one that I will definitely be surprised to see in there is Tate McRae's So Close to What. Tate McRae has had no Grammys love in the past. However, So Close to What has been kind of almost a surprising commercial success. It did very well with first week numbers. It's had a pretty big hit with Sports Car. it's going to be very hard for this to get an Album of the Year nomination. I think that critically there has been some kind of snobbery towards Tate McRae, and often the Grammys will recognize that kind of snobbery. And I say that when it comes to artists like Miley Cyrus and Selena Gomez early in their career, even Katy Perry. They've often had trouble recognizing those acts that don't always sit on the right side of the critics. And I don't think that Tate is sitting on the right side of the critics. I think there will be a push from her label for a nomination, and I certainly think some of the pop categories are not impossible, particularly for a song like Sports Car, but for it to get nominated for Album of the Year, I think she's got a way to go yet. So I would say this is a really far out chance for an Album of the Year nomination. Lorde's Virgin, another album that is not out yet.
Since I was 17, I gave you everything. Now we wake from a dream. Well, baby, what was that?
Certainly not a lock for this nomination at all. The last time she was nominated for Album of the Year was for Melodrama, which was the only nomination she received that year. Solar Power was completely shut out. Obviously, she had huge success with Pure Heroine. She took home in the main categories 4 Royals. I don't think that What Was That has been the sort of hit that is big enough to guarantee a look in here, but I would expect that this album is going to do pretty well critically based on what I've read about the record so far. I think it's a return to the kind of sound that people want from Lorde. And in that way, if it manages to be one of the most critically acclaimed albums of the year, I would say that it's in with a massive shot for a nomination here. I'm assuming that it's maybe not going to have a huge hit just based on what I've read about the record, that it's going to be quite jagged and quite challenging in many ways. But I don't think when it comes to Lorde, a massive hit is necessary for her to secure this nomination if she can get that critical love that she was missing on Solar Power. This is obviously just pure speculation given that we've heard one song from this album, but I wouldn't count it out. Miley Cyrus, Something Beautiful, another album that is not out, but an album that I have heard.
Let's pretend it's not the end of the world. Let's pretend it's not the end of the world.
Miley Cyrus has had a very weird history with the Grammys in that they basically didn't recognize her until Endless Summer Vacation. Endless Summer Vacation got a nomination for Album of the Year. Flowers ended up winning for Record of the Year, which was her first Grammy. The Grammys voters showed once again this year that they are partial to some Miley Cyrus. They awarded her and Beyonce a country duo group performance award for Two Most Wanted. So it's clear that the tides have turned on Miley Cyrus. I think the only issue is that Something Beautiful is yet to have a major hit. Endless Summer Vacation had Flowers, the biggest hit of her career, really put her in the conversation and made it almost impossible for them not to recognize her in some kind of way. I don't think Something Beautiful has done the same thing. The way that I personally feel about the record, I think that it's potentially the best of her career. And it's also got a really interesting sonic bed that I feel like could really appeal to critics. And I think if critics come for this album in droves, then she could definitely be in the conversation for Album of the Year. If the response is lukewarm for this album or just kind of even like mildly positive, I don't think she's got a shot because this album hasn't had a massive hit yet. But that remains to be seen. Coldplay Moon Music is the next one. The Grammys loves Coldplay. They've nominated them for Album of the Year several times for albums that haven't necessarily had a huge hit or done incredibly well for them. But at this point, they're kind of a legacy act. And to be honest, if Moon Music ends up getting a nomination, I would not be surprised at all. This album hasn't had anything close to what you could call a hit. It was completely panned by critics, and yet the Grammys could still nominate it. But they keep saying that this is a new Grammys, this is a refreshed Grammys, this is a younger Grammys, a more diverse Grammys. And if they prove that, I don't think that Moon Music will be nominated. I would say that this is an outside shot at this point. They're kind of the main albums that I wanted to talk about, but there are a few that I wanted to say that I think have almost no chance. FK Twigs' You Sexua, I think way too alternative. I feel like maybe in the dance pop categories or the alternative categories, it has a chance given that it was so appraised critically, but I don't think that it has a shot here. Selena Gomez and Benny Blanco's I Said I Love You First. The Grammys has almost entirely just ignored Selena Gomez's existence. And given that this album didn't exactly light the charts on fire, I don't think that anything is going to change this time around. Rosie, I also don't think this has a chance. I don't think, even though it had a huge hit in Apate, and I could see that certainly getting nominated for Best Duo/Group Performance and potentially winning because Bruno, the Grammys love him. I don't think that it has enough on there to really carry her across for an Album of the Year nomination, given that Blackpink was almost entirely snubbed as well. The other one that is a possibility is Jenny's Ruby. I think same kind of situation as Rosie. Even though I think Ruby was a better album than Rosie, I still don't think that it had enough pull, and I'm not sure if it's going to last the distance in the public eye for the voters to still be really remembering it by September, even though I will certainly remember it. Then there is also Lisa's Alter Ego, which I think has no chance, just panned way too much critically to be in with a shot here. Bon Iver, maybe not fair to say that he has no chance with his album Sable Fable, but I would be very surprised if it happened. They haven't really given him much of a look in the main categories since he won Best New Artist way back when he was releasing his second self-titled record. The other one is Halsey, The Great Impersonator. I think that this was a pretty good record, but the Grammys, again, not always been a fan of Halsey, and this album has not made enough noise in the mainstream to shift that. There are still albums to come. We've discussed some of them, but I've only discussed them if they've had like huge singles or I've got some idea of how the album is headed. The albums to come that could end up being nominated: Lana Del Rey. We still don't know if she's even going to release an album in the submission period, so who knows. Doja Cat, I think her record is coming this summer. They weren't hugely big on Scarlet, the Grammys, but they were really big on Planet Her, and I think this album's going to be a return to pop, so I could certainly see it happening for her. Ed Sheeran is releasing his album Play in September. They weren't a massive fan of his last two albums, but they have previously been a fan of his work, so if he manages to grab a big hit off this, I would maybe see this getting a moment. LaVey is also releasing her album A Matter of Time in August, I believe. I haven't really seen a lot of love for her from the Grammys, but I feel like this album could be a step up for her, and she is big enough to be in the conversation. So this is a real like outside chance, but it's a possibility if the album is good enough. And then also Benson Boone has an album coming. They recognized him for Beautiful Things, but they didn't recognize him for the album. This album's going to have to be really freaking good to have a look in here, and I just don't see it happening, to be honest. If there are any other albums that you think have a big shot that I have failed to mention here, please drop them in the comments, DM me, and we can talk about this. Or you can send me a voice note on anything you think is going to happen Grammys-wise. I would love to respond to it on the podcast. You can send voice notes to the poppod at popsamcam.com. I will put that email in the show notes below. Until then, though, I will see you on Thursday with another brand new episode. Don't forget to follow or subscribe to this podcast. Rate it 5 stars if you can. Give it a thumbs up on YouTube, wherever you are. Do whatever you can to make this podcast as visible as possible. I really appreciate it. Thank you for joining me. I will see you on Thursday.